What's up, softball families? I'm Coach Dan Blewett. In today's video, we're going to cover when should you start spending money on your daughter's recruiting process. All right, so if you're new here, I'm Coach Dan. I'm a former pro baseball player and a former baseball and softball academy owner. So I've done this with lots and lots of players, advise parents of like, hey, should you spend the money now? Should you wait? Is this team or this showcase experience or this recruiting thing worth it? And those are important questions because you don't want to be wasting money and you do want to redirect your money so you get the best bang for your buck, whether that's for development or for recruiting or for whatever it is. So in today's video, let's talk about, we'll go from age to age, starting in 18 or starting at eighth grade, going all the way up to senior in high school. So first here, age 14, what should you be spending? Number one, very little. Now let me explain these three bullets here. So recruiting, unless your daughter is like one of the best players in the country, pretty much like fully grown for an eighth grader, which is very rare, and just like pretty much you know what group you're in. If there's any ambiguity, this is not you. Then you might be doing some recruiting stuff. But for essentially everyone, zero recruiting dollars really should be spent at age 14. That means you don't need to go do things that get you exposure, that you don't need to be paying for a recruiting profile because you're not close to being to the point where someone's actually going to say, yeah, come to our college. We want to look at you because we might have an offer. You're still probably, most kids here are at least 2 years away from getting any kind of offer. And when you're that far away, it's a useless expenditure of money. Recruiting services will not say that. They'll say you should start early, but they want your money. So of course they're going to say that. And you might get some letters from colleges, but that doesn't mean that's genuine interest yet. So in general, for the vast majority of players, you should spend zero of your dollars on recruiting as an eighth grader / 14-year-old. Now you'll see travel team unimportant on my screen here. Now what I mean by that is you shouldn't go spend $5-6 grand traveling around the country playing in all these tournaments because again, they're not going to have any impact on your daughter's college implications, her college aspirations. Now, I do understand that you need to get on a team to stay with that team. So if you have to spend a little more money to be on this team so that you're on the team next year when it counts a little more, then I understand that. So don't misunderstand me. I know that sometimes you have to get in the door to be on one of these good teams that does have access to some better tournaments, which can put you in front of college coaches. But in general, you should not be wasting money going all over the country unless you don't care about your budget and it's not a big deal. If that's fine, then that's fine. But in general, those big fancy tournaments, they're just the same girls from a different state, and it's not really that big of a deal. So for the most part, at age 14, you should be focused on development, spend your money on learning how to pitch, learning how to hit, taking more ground balls, going to an instructor, whatever. Spend money on building a backyard batting cage so she can take more swings, whatever it is. Spend your money on development and don't waste it on recruiting. At age 15, this is your freshman year in high school. This is, again, where you're going to have to figure out where your daughter is skill-wise. Is she really good, like one of the best players in your county? Then maybe it's time to spend a little bit of recruiting money because players do go off the board more in softball as freshmen, which is sad, and I hope they change these pathetic rules that allow it to happen. But it does happen. But for most players, the vast majority, they're not going to be good enough where the recruiting stuff is going to matter. So you don't need to shell out for the recruiting profile, all that stuff, until you're ready. And what I mean by ready is when a college coach comes out and watches, they look at your daughter and they say, wow, she checks off this box and this box and this box. I could really see her playing for our program. And if your daughter's still more of a little girl than a woman, then it's going to be hard for them to make that appraisal, and they're going to be very far away from coming back to seeing them again and saying, oh yeah, she's ready for us. Basically, if a college coach comes and sees your kid and they could invite her to their camp a month later and maybe make an offer, that's when you're ready. If it's still like a year away of development because she's still 120 pounds, at 5'7", and she's still kind of, like stick skinny, that's not going to work super well. So the skills have got to be there where she pretty much looks like a college player at this age. If they are, then you can spend some recruiting money. If she's not, then keep spending in development and save it so you can spend more of that cash the sophomore, junior year when it finally actually matters. Travel team, this is where you want to get on one that is you can grow with that team. Like they're going to be competitive. They're going to go to some of these more exposure driven tournaments. So you probably need to latch on to one now as a freshman so you can be on that team sophomore, junior year. But again, I still don't think this is the time to blow thousands and thousands of dollars traveling around the country to, again, play in front of not really many scouts. And scouts aren't really going to sign many 15-year-olds. Only very rare D1, like high D1 kids are going to get signed as freshmen. And when I say signed, I mean like verbally committed. Age 16, this is a time, the sophomore year, when players are much more ready. And a lot of the D1 players are going to get signed here, but they're not going to really be signing D2 and D3 players as sophomores. So if your daughter doesn't fit into the D1 bucket yet, where she's not one of the absolute best players anywhere right now and legitimately has a chance to sign as a D1 player, verbally commit as a D1 player as a sophomore, then your recruiting money is not well spent now. If she is one of those caliber players, and you'll know this by, I don't know, comparing to everyone else. The high school coach I'm sure will give you advice. She's certainly a varsity starter by this point and is probably dominating in high school as a freshman and as a sophomore. That's how you know. And physically, she's going to be heads and tails above everyone else. So this should be pretty evident if you're in this category. And if not, if it's ambiguous, then the answer is no. There should be any ambiguity for the most part. So if your daughter's ready at sophomore year, like really meets that criteria of being one of the best players in your county, then spend the money on recruiting and get her noticed. Whether that means like you go to a different tournament or there's a recruiting service, whatever. But the biggest thing that you're going to do is email everyone you can find the video of your kid hitting and running and pitching and whatever she does. And I have other videos on my channel that I'll link to below that explain what to put in an email to a college coach and how to find those emails. But basically, you should be, if she's really good, now's the time to send emails to everyone and say, hey, look at my daughter. Here's our recruiting profile, or here's a video we made, which is totally fine. You don't have to spend money on a recruiting profile. Here she is. Here's all of her info. Here's how you get in contact with us. Here's how you get in contact with her high school coach. Here's her grades, height, weight, statistics, all that stuff. That's the time to do that. Of course, the daughter should send that out as an email, not the parent. So if she's ready, great. But here's the thing. I don't want you to waste money. Don't cave to the fear of missing out where you hear other uninformed parents or recruiting service people saying, you got to start now. Sophomore year is so important. It's not so important if you're just not good enough yet. If your kid's not developed enough yet, it's not important. It's important to play well every year. It's important to get better every year. But if your kid is not really a college recruit yet, and most kids are not, then it's not important. So don't let other parents who maybe their kid's in a different boat tell you what you should be doing when it's always going to be on an individual case-by-case basis. And remember, I'm speaking in generalities here that for the vast majority of players, the vast majority of players will never play in college. They won't be good enough. And the vast majority of players who do play in college will play at D2, D3, NAIA, or junior college. Only a small percentage, like 3% of players will play D1. So just remember, don't get obsessed with what everyone else is doing. Stick to your assessment of your own kid and get objective assessments of your kid and where she probably fits in and when she's really ready to be shown off. This is what parents would come to me about. They'd say, hey, Dan, do you think it's time to spend X amount of dollars on recruiting for my kid right now? I'd be like, yeah, she's good. It's time. Like people will like what they see. So yeah, go do it. Or I'd say, no, not ready. She still needs to put on 15 pounds. She still needs to get a little faster. We'd like to see her exit velocity in the batting cage get from 65 to 70 or whatever. Then when those things happen, then let's do it. I'd say wait a little bit longer, save that money now, and keep working hard. So it's age 17. This is when a lot of players are going to get their commitment. This is when, if they're ready, it's definitely time to spend the budget, whatever, get them out, email everyone you can, all different levels. And it will be important here. Colleges will also be at a lot more tournaments because they're looking for players actively here. D3, D2, junior colleges, and NAIA are going to be more heavy recruiting at age 17, the juniors, because that's when they're going to want to get those kids. No one signs for D3 as a freshman, right? If you're good enough and someone offers you a D3 scholarship as a freshman, which D3s can't give scholarships, or just be academic money, you'd wait and hold out to see if you could go play D2 or play D1. So those schools, D2s, D3s, NAIAs, they're always going to come in later. So they're going to start to really look for kids at age 17, again, the junior season or the senior season. So really this whole thing about you have to get started super early, It really applies to the D1s who can offer athletic scholarships, and they're trying to get the best talent early before everyone else figures out about them, and they're going to compete for those players. So everyone who's not a D1 talent or just isn't a D1 talent yet, because a lot of players still commit to D1s at 17 and 18, junior, senior year. That happens all the time. So don't think if you don't get signed as a freshman, sophomore, it's not going to happen, because it still very, very well can. But the most scholarship money is going to be given to the freshmen and sophomores. And that's, again, because those are the best players available really, really early. So that's kind of how it works. But again, if you're not ready till 17, that's totally fine. And that's very normal. You're still a kid at 15, 16, especially 14, right? So at 17, if she's really ready and she is physically built well and she's very fast, she has the skills where if a college coach looks at her and is like, yeah, that's a good player, I might like to have her, then it's time to go out and spend the money. Now, remember that at 18, it's, time's up. This is it. So if you haven't, but again, if you weren't ready at 17, if she just isn't quite there physically and skill wise, then still wait. If you spend recruiting money before your kid is legitimately good in the eyes of college coaches, it's just going to be wasted money. They'll put oh, look, nice player, but they're not going to act on it. So that recruiting profile money spent that year, or that big showcase, or that big amount of travel spent that year, if it's not going to result in them getting, taking the legitimate stepping stones to get signed by a school, which is a school sees you play, they like you, they talk to you, they invite you somewhere so they can see you again, then they come and watch you play. That's typically how it goes. If they're not going to take those extra steps after seeing you play once, then there's no point in really spending money to do that. So again, but if you get to 18, now it's time where you got to email everyone. If you've been emailing a lot of higher schools like D1s and D2s and they haven't responded, that probably means you're not that caliber of player. So email a lot more D3s and AIA schools and junior colleges at that point. That's how this is all going to work. So at 18, email everyone you can, cast a wide net, spend the money on recruiting, whatever. And if you weren't good enough then you hopefully had 3 good years of developmental time with your trainers, with your hitting coaches, pitching coaches, whoever, and got as much training and got as good as you could possibly be to really have a good year at 18, senior year, to hit the recruiting hard. So hopefully today's video was helpful. Obviously, the recruiting process, I know it baffles a lot of parents, and there's a ton of misinformation out there. And so if this was something that, it really befuddles you and it's hard to understand and you hear all this conflicting information, hopefully today's video was helpful. Did I miss anything? If you have any comments, leave them in the comment section below. I always respond. Again, this is a tough process and it really is an individual one. Remember, that's the biggest thing, is spending on development. That's the best bang for your buck. Your kid always needs to get better and improve. So if you're not sure if it's time for recruiting, err on the side of spending more money on development, because you're always going to get a good investment back on that money. All right. Thanks again for watching. I'm Coach Dan Blewett. Check out the links in the description below. Subscribe if you enjoyed this video, and I'll see you in the next one.